So there it is. Okay. Give me a second. Okay. So for those of you online, we've been working on the technology because this is a new thing, hosting somebody that's not here presently. Can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us online? And Jim, I'm going to have you talk and see if they can hear you as well.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Just here, ready to go anytime we need to go. Appreciate the opportunity to share things with you.
Okay, is everyone hearing Jim?
Yeah. Testing 1, 2, 3. Got me? I hope.
Louder.
No, for them. Sorry. The people online, can you hear Jim? If you can, say yes. If no, no, can't hear. Great. Okay, we need some people online to tell us whether you can hear Jim or not. Thanks, you guys, for helping. Hey, Jim, let's see if we're getting an echo or not. Go ahead and say something.
Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm here.
Okay,
sitting in my office all by myself, but anxious to go.
The handheld.
Appreciate the opportunity.
We will test this out. Okay. See if this works. Hey, Jim, say something again.
Testing 1, 2, 3. I can just barely hear you, by the way, but
yeah, I don't know how we're gonna get. Can you guys?
see if that works for you. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Sorry. Mic's working.
You use this, do not speak in that, blow it out. To put that thing. No, this one goes in.
Okay, I'm thinking that we might be able to do this. Hey, Shazad, can you turn on the other speakers, the lapel mics? Okay. Let's see. Let's go ahead and say something, Jim. Let's see if those mics pick you up.
Did you say something?
Not.
Fine.
I think we're good. Hey, Jim.
Yes.
That's one, two. Check, check.
I can hear now, but he's echoing.
Okay.
Marcelo, what I'm getting from you is an echo.
Okay, Jim, I think we're just gonna have to go with it. So, there's gonna be a little echo here for a second. And for those of you online, we're gonna get started. For those of you here, welcome. And I'm probably not gonna talk too much because I'm creating a huge echo. So, Jim, everybody loves you. Everybody knows you. You're the master. You, hold on a sec. Oh. Okay.
Head, your heart is what you need to really focus on. That doesn't mean you don't need stuff. Doesn't mean that you don't need skills, but you got to get your head right first, and you need to have an understanding of how and why things work. Okay, law of provident living, and I know some people have been to my classes. This is a quick review, but this is the most fundamental of all. There's four parts to it. One is spiritual, attitude, and then knowledge. Now, the problem we have is when people say, oh, knowledge, look at all the knowledge that's on the internet, in the books, in videos. And I'm here to tell you that there's no knowledge on the internet. This class contains no knowledge. Library doesn't have any knowledge. It's all information. That's all I can share with you is information. So how do you turn it into knowledge? You see, just having information on a subject is not knowledge. What you need to have is good, correct, credible, proper information. Then you multiply it by experience, because when you work with it, handle it, now you have knowledge. You have to practice it. I don't think anybody has the right to sell something or talk about or teach about something they haven't actually done. So this little formula, K equals I times E. I'm an engineer, so I write formulas. Knowledge equals information multiplied by experience. Okay, then we can come to our stuff. So it has to be in that order: spiritual, attitude, knowledge, stuff. And you see, when you have a spiritual foundation, you have knowledge of how and why things work. What happens is you have an attitude that says, okay, I can deal with this. You don't have to like it, but I can deal with it. I can solve the problems. See, what you have to understand is that survival is the ability to adapt. If you can't adapt, you won't make it. Law of stewardship, very important. Authority, you're alive. You have the authority to act. You have the responsibility to act within the bounds of your authority and to act properly, because you'll be held accountable for what you do and don't do. That's what this thing we call preparedness, or I prefer provident living, is all about. It's understanding how and why things work so that you can take care of yourself. Another one that fits right in with it real quick: law of the parachute. Well, we're not going to jump out of planes, but still the law applies. You have to have the parachute before you need it. You have to have it on when you need it. You have to know how to use it. You have to actually use it, by the way. Just having a parachute won't do any good. And it has to be of life-saving quality. Now, we're talking about, for your provident living, your attitudes, knowledge, skills, and supplies, because the disaster, the emergency doesn't give a rip. It has no responsibility for your well-being. You see, those are yours. Right back to the law of stewardship. Your responsibility for your attitudes, knowledge, and skills, and the things you have. Okay, one of these things I talk about, that everything you need to know, do, and have for every day of your life, is in these 9 provident living modules. They are foundation, clothing, water, sanitation, nutrition, shelter, wellness, tools, and supplies. Foundation is really about what's in your head and your heart. That's the foundation for all of this, and it's at the top of the list. We're going to be talking about first sanitation, critical, and then a second part of that, because if things become unsanitary, like your water, well, it'll kill you. So we're going to be talking about water also. Now, the big picture, sanitation. It's a hidden disaster that's right in front of people's eyes. We don't think about it. We don't deal with it because, well, we don't have to. Okay, so why is sanitation so important? In fact, why is it that so many people are clueless? Well, it's real simple. Sanitation in perspective, because it's hidden. It's not right in front of us. Um, Health and life expectancy improved significantly during the 20th century, and most of the credit was given to antibiotics, drugs, doctors, hospitals, and things like that. But that's not correct. Almost all of the credit belongs to improved sanitation practices. I'll give you some stats that'll help you understand that. And that's why this is so important that you get this. This is not a light subject. This is very, very important. Okay, 1952. I was alive. I was in grade school. And I remember things about the cases of polio. And so we went and got vaccinated and everything. That was because there were 14 cases per 100,000 people, not fatalities, just cases. Well, take a look at this. Around 1900, 4,429 babies per 100,000 died from diarrhea. And that was just diarrhea. And you see these diarrhea deaths were 100% caused by failed sanitation. They were all preventable. Sanitation is so critical. Here's another one. This is the health revolution that was going on. The decline in infant mortality that came about in 1900 when we started getting our act together on sanitation issues. And you see how it declined. Massachusetts, England, Wales, the United States started declining sharply. Here's another one. Right around then, we learned about sanitation. This links us to water. This is a number of deaths caused by typhoid fever in Pittsburgh. And notice that right around 1907, there was a water filtration plant put in, so they sanitized the water better, and the death rates fell off dramatically. So you see, sanitation is vitally important. Where sanitation is poor, death and disease run rampant. But we have a tendency right now in this country to say, well, that's those poor people over there. Gee whiz, I'm glad I don't live there. How terrible, golly. Okay, consider this. See, in the US, we've had very few sanitation breakdowns. On a big scale, hasn't happened since the 1900s, back in the early 1900s. And the problem is, this will catch most people both ignorant and unprepared, and it'll get them. Okay, here's something we can look back to. 2010, we had this horrific earthquake down in Haiti. And then we look at what was going on down there, and there's I gathered lots of stats from that back then. Actual clinical apparent. Now, this is 2010, not long after it occurred. There was about 200,000 people who were clinically apparent. They were sick. Subclinical, 800,000. That meant that of the population of 1 million people, there were 10% of them that were infected with cholera, that they were carriers or they're already sick. Let's move forward, a little more recent to this. 2012, I captured these. As of December 12, 2012, hospitalizations were 2,300 per week, with 40 deaths per week from cholera. So it was getting better. And then by 2014, we had up to almost 10,000 deaths. In fact, they're probably above 10,000 now. 734,000 confirmed cholera cases. You need to understand some things. The subclinical infection could have exceeded 2.5 million. That's 25% of the population. What this means is that the cleanup of stopping that is going to take actually generations to take care of. It's not going to occur very quickly. A few more things to think about and how this comes back to us. At that point in time, there had been $13.5 billion in aid sent to Haiti. And there was a lot of that was about infrastructure, about health and water and all those things. But all this aid that poured in there, you need to understand this: an untreated cholera has a mortality rate of 60%. Not a good stat. You don't want to get it. Certainly, if you don't know how to treat it, what you can do about it. And then understand this. What if there was no aid that went to Haiti? What if they were on their own? They didn't get any outside help. What would have the death rate been? It would have been horrific. Probably 60% of that population would have died. Okay. So how does that apply to us? Well, let's look at sanitation. There are two key areas about sanitation. One is this: you need to be 100% sure of your ability to keep yourself and your environment clean, safe in that regard. And then you have to have ample amounts of safe water for consumption and for sanitation. See, it ties together with water all the time. Why is water so critically important? Well, what's the leading cause of death on planet Earth right now? What do more people die from than anything else? Dysentery. Where does it come from? Contaminated water. That's a sanitation issue that you must understand. So in the US, we've had very little widespread dysentery issues. However, this means it will catch most people off guard, unprepared, don't know what to do about it. So having ample amounts of sanitary water is extremely important for your health and well-being. See, if you get sanitation water wrong, you get sick and or you die or people around you do. Okay, sanitation and water fail in our country? Come on, really? Okay, well, we have this dependence that we've developed on our infrastructure. All of our infrastructure that brings us our utilities, services, and everything, and they all tie together. And in particular, they all tie together with the golden thread of power, the power grid. And I'm doing most of my teaching right now, talking in classes and presentations about power grid. In fact, I just want to tell you, I've said this before, we are going to lose our power grid. And when it goes down, everything else goes down with it. And that's hard to get your head around, but you need to study it and understand it. Infrastructure failure is serious. And when the power goes away and it causes all these issues, what could cause it to go away? The power going off or any other thing? Well, if people had to shelter in place because there was really a nasty bird flu kind of a pandemic where you have a mortality rate of 80% or something like that, some nuclear event, civil unrest and breakdown. So what happens? People are going to shelter in place. They're not going to go to work. You'll have cascading micro problems throughout all of our infrastructure, loss of maintenance worker, loss of operating personnel not taking care of things, and it'll all ripple through and things will shut down. Okay? People in developed societies with improved lifestyles don't want things to get worse. Something just happens as it did in Haiti, and there we are. Now, consider this. Modern disposal systems require a functioning infrastructure, a support personnel, electricity, fuels, and understand this also. Modern disposal systems can fail because of, well, physical damage, loss of energy sources, no maintenance or operating personnel to take care of things. During disasters, people can break down. Physical stress can just overwhelm us. Emotional stress. I mean, your world is upside down. You're trying to help your family dig people out, find your stuff, supplies. I mean, this can be very distressful. Then we have lack of proper rest. You're being overloaded with physical things you have to do. Poor and inadequate nutrition, that'll be common, and particularly the lack of potable, clean water will be a problem. Biological microbial overload because of all this stuff that's being dumped around you. And what happens is the immune system simply collapses. It can take so much, but it's really quite powerful what it'll do. But when it's overloaded, finally it goes down. This is what we want to stop the rampant spread of. These things that are killing people by the millions every year around the world, particularly cholera, typhoid, and dysentery, big ones that spread. You take a look at these critters. Oh, they're beautiful under the electron microscope. The protozoa, the bacteria, the viruses, the parasitic worms, they're beautiful, but they have a job to do. They were created to do a job. And if you don't intervene and stop them, keep them away from you, getting, taken over, they will do their job. We got the echo gone, I hope? Okay. Following a disaster, failed sanitation will track down, sicken, maim, and kill the ignorant and unprepared, and that's what you don't want to be. So when things really break down, it will be up to you. It's not up to the government, it's not up to your neighbor, it's up to you. The cavalry is not coming. They might want to come, they might be on the way, but they're in the same problem you have, and or they're taking care of millions of other people before they get to you. So your actions now will determine your outcome. Your preparation is vital. So we go back to this idea on Haiti and simply say, since cholera, just one of the diseases, is 60% fatal untreated, what if there was no help? What if there was no aid? What if you're on your own? You've got to not get it or something else because it'll get you. The people in Haiti are better and were better prepared than we are in this country for a Haiti level of disaster. And should the U.S. have a Haiti event, that level of destruction in all of our infrastructure, the disease and death will be worse for us than it was for them. Why is that? Why? Well, consider what was their lifestyle? Very poor country. And they had a lifestyle that's, not very far above ground zero. They didn't have very far to fall, but think about us and our lifestyle that's in the stratosphere compared to many of those people. You see, it's about our collective attitude to deal with destroyed infrastructure, loss of our water infrastructure, sewer, electricity, transportation, communication, medical services, waste collection, insect, vermin control, and there's a longer list than that. You see, this is how it works for us right now. You just throw it in the basket, take it to the curb, flip the handle, it all just goes away, disappears. That's why when this stuff fails, it'll cause more death and misery than anything else. Sanitation issues, which tie into water also. All right, Houston, we have a problem for the answers. You see, the details. Now, unfortunately, in our society now, particularly for younger people, whatever, I just want a soundbite. Just give me a list. I want to know what to buy. I'll just buy it, and then it'll be okay. That really doesn't work. So I've got 10 hours of published classes that won't fit in this little overview that we're trying to, get to you very, very quickly. I want to plant seeds. I want you to be willing and anxious to study these things, dig into it deeper and learn more. You see, so I'm going to be talking about strategy, some of the big picture things in this. I have 2 courses. I'll tell you how to get to these things. There's about 10 hours that's published. You can have access to it at very low cost. Sanitation and water and strategies for these things. Okay, some things, very quick statements right here. Your first defense is to strengthen your immune system now. Get it in balance, make it strong, get as healthy as you can. Change your lifestyle if you need to, your diet, anything else. Get healthy and strong. So the first thing that comes along doesn't just take you out. Secondly, you must be able to maintain your own health and wellness when there's no clinic, hospital, or pharmaceuticals. Learn what you can do. There's many things you can do. But the first thing is don't get sick in the first place. Third defense, you've got to be ready to care for your own sanitation. And then that includes your water and everything now, because these guys are just waiting to go get you. That's their job. If you get lax about this, get stupid about it, they're going to get you. Okay, we'll start with the worst sanitation issues first, and then we'll go to, some of the worst ones. You see, one of the most deadly substances on planet Earth is one that we have control of: human waste. And it's like, oh man, most sanitation stuff is socially undiscussable because, well, it's simply whisked out of sight and mind. We don't have to worry about it. The system takes care of it. And you see, and we don't even need to talk about it. In fact, it's kind of embarrassing to talk about these things. We're afraid to discuss it. What I'm telling you is this: from the least hazardous to the most hazardous things, what we'll talk about, and then we'll come to the really nasty one. All right, first off, we've got urine. Now, urine is basically pretty clean. It's easy to work with and quite safe to handle. Then we've got garbage. This is the organic stuff that comes off the plate, out of the garden, or what have you. And then we come to fecal matter. That's the big one. And when it comes to sanitation issues and discussing these things, I'm an engineer who worked with a lab coat and all these things and pretty pristine. And I've had to learn to talk about some really ugly things here. How many of you people, if it in the live audience, if I was there, I'd say, put up your hands, all you people in the last week, or say 2 weeks, with your family, maybe at a family gathering or just talking about things, you've talked about poop and what you're going to do about poop. We're like, oh, no, we don't talk about that. Now, I know why. We had 9 children. First 6 were boys. If you want to bring that up around the table, man, you'll have giggling and all kinds of things going on. Well, I understand that. Well, we had to deal with it. But you've got to get serious about this. You must have real sewer down solutions that will work. Simple as that. Okay. When the system is disrupted, your actions will determine your outcome and the outcome of people around you. You need to think upstream and downstream. And particularly when I'm talking about this in sewer, if you're connected to a municipal sewer, which most people are, the people that are upstream from you, they're flushing downhill, and you're upstream from people you're flushing downhill to, that can cause some problems depending on it is. We'll talk a little bit about that. You must take responsibility, and you must take action immediately. You can't wait and say, well, I don't know, looks like the power's down and there's nothing left there. Maybe it'll come back, it'll be okay. Okay? What you've got to do is think community. You've got to help others, and particularly help others right now to get prepared. Help them get an understanding and knowledge of why this is so critical. You can't wait until everybody's getting sick and then say, hey, we got to fix this. So what are you prepared to do when that stuff goes away? The water, the communication, the electricity, the sewage disposal. So here's what people normally think. Say, well, okay, we got the pit toilet, the outhouse. Grandma and grandpa had one out on the farm, what have you, and I see them out there. And so we'll just dig a big hole and we'll hang our heinies over that and take care of that, or maybe we'll put a seat over it. I want you to know that's what Haiti did. Those deaths, that's what Haiti did. They have this waste that's exposed to the air and vermin and mosquitoes and things like that. Now, some people say, well, I've got an RV. I got a tank in there, 50-gallon tank, maybe it's a 100-gallon tank. Great. Now you got 100 gallons of really nasty, ugly water. What the heck are you going to do with it? Some people are going to go like, well, I'll just drag my trailer, my motorhome off over here and I'll open that dump valve and spread it around. That's Haiti. Don't do that. You got the chemical toilets and the porta potty. Well, those are pretty good, but they're designed for you to take them someplace and dump them in a disposal system. Now that you've pickled that stuff on the blue water, what the heck are you going to do with it when you pickle it? You've got to have a safe place to get rid of it. And then, of course, we have the bushes. Now, since I've done a lot of remote living, summer, winter, spring, fall, out in the wilderness, and I've done a lot of bushes out there, and you do it properly, it's okay. But when you have a concentration of people, particularly where there's a disaster, this is what the bushes look like. And that's where people are. And that is filth to the nth degree that you've got to be careful of. Here's some more bushes. This is the Superdome, Sandy. Oh my goodness, talk about bushes and nasty sanitation issues are in there and people who got sick. So what are you prepared to do? Well, it kind of depends on the system you're now using. Some of you may in fact have a septic system. Well, that might still work as long as you have water to flush it and everything, it's not damaged. Most people and city dwellers are going to be hooked to a municipal sewer system. When the power grid goes down, when the water grid goes down, or when there's an earthquake that breaks pipes or what have you, the municipal sewer system isn't going to work. And when the power goes down, it's going to stop working very quickly and it's not coming back. So what do? In order to stay well, you have to have options in place now, not like I'll do it someday because I've attended this class and I read the books. And so, yep, I know what to do. You do not have knowledge. Okay. Now, there's three kinds of systems I'll talk about briefly right here. One of them is, well, the septic system. If you're in a rural area off municipal sewer, you have a buried septic system, or you might even have a sewage pond. Those aren't as common. That requires a reliable source of water to flush it. You don't have the water to flush it, it doesn't do you any good. You understand that it's self-contained, it's non-electric, it's low maintenance. I didn't say no maintenance because you need to pump those things periodically. Every now and then somebody said, well, I ended up pump ours in 30 years. Great. In year 31, when the water's gone or the septic system is plugged up and you haven't had it pumped because you didn't do that, what are you going to do then? Okay, there's no infrastructure outside. There are groundwater concerns, and that's why when our population gets high, we have to put in municipal systems so we don't just pump all that waste into the ground. But you can use gray water. Here's one thing to understand. You can use gray water to flush your toilet with. In other words, if water's precious, but you got enough to drink and cook with, a little bit to wash with, save that wash water, any of that bathing water, as long as it doesn't have chunks of food in it, flush your toilet with it if you have a rural septic system. Okay, here's another one. For the city dwellers, the main thing you can do is, for the long term, it's using a composting toilet. Now, there's a number of them out there that you can buy them. The Sunmar, one of them. There's the Envirolet. There's the Ecotech Carousel. There's a Clavis Multrum. These are big ones that are built in. There's all kinds of them like this. Some of them are better than others. And you can have one of these things. You might have like this. Well, there's a toilet. It's composting. But I show that picture because something you need to understand that's important. When you look at that, where that is outside with one of those that just sits on top of the floor, That's a forest that you can tell it doesn't get real cold there. This is a biological process. It has to be kept warm enough so it doesn't freeze. Otherwise, the bacteria shuts down. Now, that's not bad. They'll come back to life, but when it warms up. But in the meantime, this stuff is building up. Now, here is a book you must have. This is not nice book, good reading. No, you must own this book. And I would say own the hard copy of it. Now, you'll find online that there is the third edition. You can download it for free, but I'm going to tell you, you really shouldn't do that. Buy the book, the fourth edition, because it's expanded. It has more tables, more illustrations, more discussion in it, about 50 more pages. But the other thing is you must have a hard copy, because when the electricity's down, your digital things, they may not work. And if you got all your books in digital, it's like, I can't get at them. They didn't do you any good unless you have them memorized. Probably can't memorize everything. So I'm telling you to get the book so you have the reference manual. You need to be playing with it now, using it, setting up some of the, know that you can do it. So don't try to get one of them and say, well, I'll print it out someday, because you may not get it printed out and then you won't have it. Buy the book. They're about between $20 and $25. I know that Marcelo, he said he's going to get those in to be sure you have them. And these people at the food storage depot, good people. They're earnest about what they're doing. They're one of my favorite places to send people because I like what they do. Here's some of the things that you would see in the Human Org Handbook. Pictures, illustrations, discussion about how this works, how to make it, how to build it. This is a do-it-yourself. This is low cost. Hey, you can go buy one of the Clavis Multrons and have it installed, and that'll handle maybe 30 or 40 people. It'll probably cost you $15,000. You can set up your own system that'll handle 30 or 40 people fairly inexpensively. Probably don't have 30 or 40, have a less number of them. So you want to get the book and learn how to do it and be practicing. Lots of valuable information in this book, critically important. Okay, now let's get back to these things. We've talked about the personal septic system, the composting toilets that you can buy, and then we have another one. We have the what I call the Deuteronomy 23:13 manual system. Now, this is a temporary system to start with that we'll begin with real quickly. Now, I'll pause for just 5 minutes. If you want to stand up, move around, grab a glass of water, because I know I'm pumping out a lot of information here, but this is going to be short. But I want you to stand up and fluff your feathers for a second, move around, so you're ready to go. Because once your feathers start to spark, the brain goes to sleep. So fluff your feathers. In fact, I'm going to fluff mine for 1 second, but this is not going to take long. Stretch a little bit, move around, get a drink of water, and then we'll gather back here in just a minute. It felt good to stand up for a second. Okay, I'm watching my timer here. We've been a minute and a half, and I want to make this short because I've got a lot of material here. And I want to plant these materials in your head with the idea that you are willing to study more, like getting that book, the Human Org book. You want to study it, you want to learn it, and you want to get the supplies, materials, and tools, which are not very expensive. You can put that system together. In fact, if you're a good scrounger, you can do it for literally almost free, or just a few dollars. Buy a little bit of wood, get some screws, and put it together, and you can build that system. Get some water in me for a second. We're coming down to the end of our timer. Hope you got your feathers fluffed, got a drink. We're going to start again. Okay. Hope you're settling in. Back to where we were. These three systems that you want to learn to use. Now to the Deuteronomy 23:13 manual system. And you can look it up in your Old Testament, Deuteronomy 23:13, because the Lord told the children of Israel how to handle that hundreds of thousands of people that were in the field. There was a concentration of people, and everything was working like it normally does. They had a waste disposal problem. Nobody thinks about that. Well, the Lord told them what to do. I'll read that to you in just a minute if you don't want to look it up right now. Okay. Here's a key concept. By the way, are we on seeing the slides in here? I'm kind of watching to see if we're caught up with my slides. What I'm seeing right now is a slide I had a little while ago. Do we have the current slide up, Marcelo?
Says key concept 1, keep urine separate from fecal matter.
Yep, that's the one. Okay. Thank you, because what I'm seeing doesn't show that. All right. Keep urine separated from fecal matter. That's key concept number 1. Principle here. Why? Well, you're going to dispose of each of them separately by separate methods. Now, right now, you put them in the same pot, but when you're having to do it yourself, you want to keep them separate. It's not that hard to do. You just have to commit to doing it. You see, urine is reasonably safe. It's easy to work with. This liquid, and it can be disposed of right away. Urine is a very valuable resource. You're a fertilizer factory. That's what it comes down to. If you don't have the urine in with the solid matter, you're going to have less weight, less volume to handle. Also, you're going to have less contamination of spills because it's not this soupy, sloppy mess and what have you. Big deal is it reduces odor because urine ages very quickly. It breaks down, the urea breaks down into the ammonia. It's a really strong smell. And so you want to get rid of it pretty quick and carry it out. Now, I do classes. I've done a class on the title of the class is real simple, urine. And it's a very valuable, overlooked resource that you want to consider. I'm going to say using it right now. That's a little weird. My wife doesn't come to my meetings because she gets embarrassed about some of the things I say. You may want to start collecting it now and using it because it's very, very valuable. Now, when I do a class like that, if you were to, one of your neighbors sees you going someplace, say, hey, Bob, where are you going tonight? Well, I'm going to a class. What's the class on? Urine. Probably won't talk to you again. So the subtitle might be calling all weirdos and people really serious about being prepared. The first time I did the urine class, when we advertised it, I thought, nobody's going to come because it's urine. It's weird. Who wants to talk about that? We had standing room only. We had people along the walls in there because they want to learn about it. Well, we'll talk more about that another time. Don't have time tonight because that's an hour-long class on itself. Key concept number 2. Key concept number 1 is to keep the urine and fecal matter separated as much as you can. Now, sometimes, depending on a person, if they're sick or, what have you, maybe they can't do that, and children may not be able to do that, but as much as you can. You want to have a safe long-term method of properly disposing of the fecal matter, the poop, the solids. Fecal matter is very, very dangerous. It's just laced with all kinds of microbes, bacteria, viruses, funguses, and parasitic worms and things in some cases. You must be prepared in advance. You got to play with this idea of how do I get rid of this stuff? So you see, if you get this wrong and don't do it right, people get sick, people die is what it comes down to. And you want to practice and know that you can do it, that you have all of the tools and the experience and the place to do this. Keep from mixing the urine in, as we've already said. And you want to see Deuteronomy 23:13. What does that say? Okay, here's what it says. It says this. And thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon, and when thou shalt ease thyself when thou art abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shalt turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. You remember the principle, dust to dust? Well, that food came out of dust. It needs to go back. Just like you, when you're done with that shell that you live in, it just needs to go back. Now, the details on how to do that in your house, this is about an hour long in itself. I cover that in what I published, and I'll talk about where you can get to that because you need to understand you can do this temporarily. You really, in the long run, you want to set up a composting system either by buying one of those, more expensive toilets or buying the Joseph Jenkins book and practicing and knowing that you can do it the way he says to do it. You see, sanitation, you must have real sewer down solutions that will work, okay? implementing these concepts. They are, well, safely handling urine and disposing of the poop. You can do this with your existing system as part of the Deuteronomy 23:13. You can use this toilet that you sit on because we already have it. That's kind of handy. Of course, you're not going to use the wet system. You don't have water. You don't have flushing capability. So there's several steps you go through. You dry it, you sanitize it, you clean it, you turn off the water, all those things. I'm not showing it here. It's just details in the video. This is bolted down to the floor. It's stable. It won't tip over. It's comfortable. It's more normal, particularly for people that are under a lot of stress because they're all freaked out about things not working. And you're going to tell them, what I want you to do out in the backyard is this. And it's like, they're not going to go for that. So you can do this temporarily in your house. You can convert it back to a wet system. If everything comes back and it'll work, you're not destroying anything. And what you want to do is, of course, get the details in here. Oh, yeah, it's simple. I'll just tell you real quick, but there's some things you need to practice and know that you can do. Using a plastic bag that lines it, you can put it in there. You can use the seat and everything. Of course, you got a bag in there. You got to have, a number of bags. You have some dry material like dried leaves or dried grass or other compost that you put in there, covered up and down in the toilet. And there's some little details there you want to watch in the video class. And then you're going to cover up that toilet, put the lid down, and not let a 2-year-old get in there because they're going to wonder what's in there and they want to play with it. You don't want them to play with it. Let me tell you. So you got to keep it safely tucked away. And then you're going to carry it outside and you're going to put it in the soil. But you don't put the plastic bag in the soil. You've got to get it out in the soil because if you put a twist tie on the bag and drop it in a hole, it's going to be in there 10 years later. And when somebody digs that up, they're going to wonder what's in the bag. You don't want to know what's in the bag. Leave it alone. Okay. So more details in that video that you can get to very easily. All right. Expedient short-term solutions. Now, short-term, this is something you can do at home and you can start today. Get a bucket. The seat's nice. You don't have to have a seat. It just keeps the ring on your hiney from getting real deep. But you have a bucket and you can use, one of them can be with urine, can go in there. And for the solids, you put it in a bucket with a plastic bag, just like we were talking about in your toilet. And then it can be carried out and disposed of properly. Now, if it's temporary and, the system's going to come back, well, then you can dispose of the plastic bag. Otherwise, you're going to need to do it the way I teach in there. Long-term or short-term, you've got to decide early. You see, if you're already using a composting toilet, nothing changed. If you have water to flush the septic system, nothing changed for you. But if you don't have those and you're on a sewer system, and what's the duration? Is it going to be long or short term? Well, if it's just going to be a couple hours, you can probably hold it. But you can start early with a bucket and a bag and a bucket with a bag in it. And you want to convert over to it temporarily for a few days, have it ready to go right now. Because it's kind of like this. It's like, no, I'll just use the toilet and then the water comes. Well, if it doesn't come back, what the heck are you going to do? You're going to have that bowl down in there full of some stuff that's really nasty. You're going to be down in there dipping it out. And I'm being real blunt about these things. So once you get in your head, you need to be prepared. And if you're not, you're going to have to be dealing with some nasty things and it'll spread disease around. Don't wait until the toilet is full and there's no water to flush with. Go to the bucket temporarily right now. Now, if you live someplace remote, life will be different like that out where I live or my one son lives. If you're in town and you're in a row house or what have you, hey, that's going to be a little different. What can you do temporarily? Well, you can use the bucket in your apartment or in your high rise or what have you. You can have some dry material like cat litter and peat moss, and you can store those bags for a little while. In other words, if the power and the water is going to be off for a couple of days and you're expecting it to come back and or you're going to evacuate, you can do this for right now, and then things are not coming back, you're leaving because you can't stay in that mess. Okay, temporary solutions while on the move. Well, this is really about an evacuation kit. And evacuation kit, I publish things on that. This might be a sanitation kit you could take with you with some sanitizers and toilet paper and a bucket and bags and a seat and all these kind of washcloth. Lots of nice little things that'll work for a few days, maybe a week or so. That's temporary, but it'll carry you over the first few days. Now, for your overall strategy, long-term in particular, And these are covered in this sanitation set. I used to publish it as a DVD. I don't do that anymore. I publish it online because I can update things. People can have access to it and it's cheaper. And by the way, there's a lot of people say, what's a DVD? Oh, I used to have one of those. I don't have that player. So I don't do DVDs anymore. It's online. You can stream it, is the bottom line. Tell you how to get to that in a minute. Here's some of the other things you have to take care of. You want to protect your home from sewage going into your basement. Now, if you don't have a basement, sewage is not going to be an issue if everything's by code because the crown of the road and where the manholes are is going to be outside your house. But if you have a basement, if there's flood water and or something gets plugged up, then people upstream from you can be flushing their toilet in your basement. That's really ugly. I've got pictures of it in the other class, in the full class. So you want to think about, how am I going to stop that? What do I do if that's coming at me? Cleaners and sanitizers, things you're going to store. I prefer to use things that are not heavy duty chemicals. There's a lot of things that work very, very well. You want to store them. You want to learn how to make some of these things. And then you need, for personal hygiene, to have a lot of things in storage. One thing I'll mention here briefly is bar soap. The way that it's made, it can spread disease. It can spread things by you think, well, soap, yeah, and you don't. By the way, you don't want to be using the antimicrobial things. We have a real problem with all of the antimicrobial things around us, making superbugs and getting things to where they can tolerate those things. So don't use the antimicrobial. Bar soap, there you are. You just have tiny little bits of water. So you use that bar soap, you lather up your hands a little bit, and then you put the bar down. You're not going to rinse that thing. What does it have on it? Bacteria from your hands. And then you're not going to rinse the bar of soap because it takes a lot of water. And then you maybe rinse your hands a little bit. So bacteria will grow on there. You can watch them grow on bar soap on it. So you want to use liquid soaps and things like that you're going to be pumping or pouring out. You're not going to be contaminating. Here's a little topic. I want you to watch this video for a second. All right, where to go? There we go. Hate it when that happens.
Emma. Huh? Emma. Emma.
Every day yet on my
Emma.
Oh, I'm begging.
Emma.
Now, yeah, you're going to store some toilet paper. When they all look like that, what are you going to do? And there's easy strategies. There's things that have been done years ago. Toilet paper's only been around since the late 1800s, and there's millions of people that don't have toilet paper now. You just need to learn how to deal with it in a different way, safely and sanitary. Easy to do, but you need to put that together. I cover that in the sanitation class. We talk about that in depth. Yeah, store some paper goods. Keep things cleaned up. Have the mops and the buckets and things. They're non-electric stuff. You can do the sweepers and stuff. Your personal protection, sanitation issue, mosquitoes, getting malaria. That's a sanitation issue. So now then the mosquito bars for sleeping at night, depending on what you are, the mosquito protection, but also things for your hands, the masks and what have you. Scrubs can be a very, very useful thing to have so that you don't get yourself all mucked up. And then we've got pest and vermin control. You need to prepare for that because they spread a huge amount of disease. So you want to have that around you also. Okay, now, following a disaster, you must know that when you have a sewer down solution, failure to be properly prepared and ready to deal with it can be deadly. Now you have some real water solutions too, because failed infrastructure guarantees bad water. That's all there is to it. Bad water is what you're going to have. And now, hopefully you don't have really filthy water. But I'm going to talk, I always talk worst case. Now, loss of sanitation infrastructure won't be a hazard for you if you can keep things cleaned up and sanitary, have safe water for cleaning to start with, properly dispose of human waste, store safe drinking water, and you can purify drinking water in the future. And in particular, what if you have really nasty water? Hopefully you don't. And you've got to turn that into clean, potable drinking water. Now, for people that are in our area, understand this, the way I describe a nasty, filthy water is, think of Utah Lake, shallow lake. And it's very, it's not very deep, has lots of silt in it. It grows lots of, moss and things in it. It's around a populated center. But think about in a disaster where you have Utah Lake, and that's the only water you have. It has raw sewage flowing into it, and there's bodies floating in it, two-legged, four-legged, eight-legged, whatever it is. That's nasty water. That's what we get after some of these disasters. Now, contaminated water is deadly serious. It's not just about feeling bad, having the air yerps and running at both ends. That's a problem. But it's a real problem because you're unable to take care of yourself and others that are in need. Children, babies, the elderly, they're at greatest risk when you can't help them. Okay, safe water from highly contaminated water is more complex than the industry wants you to believe. Now, there's a lot of simple things you can do when the water isn't really nasty that you should be ready to do, but what if it's really nasty? Now, let's consider what municipalities go through to deliver safe water. Most of the time, this is what they're doing, the big ones. Who cares about municipalities? They're big, they're expensive, all this equipment and everything. Why would you even care? Well, there's a reason why you care. You say, well, they're too big, they're too complex, doesn't apply to me. Can we learn anything from them? How does it apply to emergency water? Well, let's take a look at what they do. Now, first off, you can go online, you can look these things up, all the different steps that these major cities use to deliver water, all the things they go through, and then you can add them up and look at them, what they're doing and everything. And you see this. And then you break it down into, I like to do because I want to understand how and why things work. I dig into the details. And you'll see that they have 6 major stages, water treatment, and within those stages, they have other steps in them. So now then there's like maybe 19, 20 steps in there they're going through, and they're using clean water. They're not looking for filthy water. Clean water, lakes and what have you, wells, they go to great distances and depths and expense to deliver clean water. They're not using filthy disaster water that you might be, and still they're going through all these steps. And consider this also, they also constantly monitor their water quality. Some of them are so automatic that every 30 minutes they're looking at it, or even sooner than that, constant monitoring for safety. And then they're doing continual maintenance on the systems. And somebody wants you to buy one thing, one filter, one chemical process, one simple thing. Hey, it only costs $49.95 to do everything. Hey, those things will work when you have clear water, stream water. They may work pretty good. But if you're dealing with what I'd call ugly wild water, these are all pictures of water that are around me in my area here. Or you got some really filthy disaster water, and that's all you got. It's contaminated with all kinds of sewage and garbage and stuff like that. Get real. If you get this wrong, you die. And you say, well, let's see if you're relying on the word of the manufacturer or the salesperson, that it will work under real world worst case conditions. That's what we have to look at. Now, that's what I'm always looking at. What's the worst it could be? Will it work under the word? What if they're wrong? What if, oh, sure, it'll take care of that water. This filter will do that. It'll take care of it. Well, what if they're wrong? Well, if you assume things they didn't actually say, because they didn't spell it out right to you, and because they didn't clearly spell it out, you assume everything's okay. Well, what will it do? What will it not do under actual worst case conditions? So I want to give you some thoughts here. Now, again, if you're not dealing with really filthy water, it's pretty easy. There isn't a whole lot of trouble taking care of those, but here's some key solution points when we're talking about water. Okay, one of them is this. It is more complex than you're being told for really bad water. But it's doable. It's not really hard. It's just more complex. It's more expensive than you're being told. If you're trying to deal with really nasty water, that's just reality. It's more expensive. Understanding is vitally important. It's not hard. You have to know how and why the systems work, what to do, and when and how to apply them. And then proper maintenance is required. It isn't just kind of set and forget, walk away and don't do anything. You're going to have to understand the reality of how you take care of these things. You can't cheap cheat when it's bad. Just like a parachute. When I talk about parachutes, because when you jump out of the plane and it's not a quality parachute, even though you're wearing it, and that thing shreds up above you, you can't fix the problem then. You're going to be using, for bad water, between 5 to 9 stages, just like in cities. That's just the truth. You can't do it with one simple thing when the water's bad. The stages must not be blended together. You have to have separate, distinct stages. And the reason for this is so I can service it. It's kind of like the really cheap printers that use ink cartridge at CMYK, and it has all 4 colors in there. Yeah, you run out of black and you got to throw the whole thing away. You run out of blue, still you got to replace them all. I want to be able to replace the blue or the yellow or the red anytime in there. So water purification principles. Now here we go again, just looking at principles of which how you may want to look at this. Okay, first off, you're going to do some pre-treatment. Now, if you're using a simple, you know, like a Berkey or something like that, there's some things you can do to pre-treat it to be sure that the water is, you know, I'm putting a whole lot of trash in there. I want it to be fairly clean that's in there. So I'm going to pre-treat it, get the trash and the silt out, the things that float on top. Don't throw them in your filter system. Now, clarification is a step you can learn about. This is what cities use. They use a coagulating agent. They'll make a flock so that the little tiny things will clump together and they'll be easier to filter out. You can learn about that, how to do that. You have, of course, pre-filters. And understand these things don't have to be exactly in this order. And each one of these stages, like this coarse pre-filter, might have several filters in there of increasing fineness. Because I can just throw, you know, a 0.2 micron right in there and it'll take out everything and it plugs, you know, instantly, you know, and so we want to have pre-filters to get some of this coarse stuff out. Might have a fine pre-filter between 0.5 to 1 micron. And then we go down to a bacteria filter. That'll be something with less than 2.2 microns. That'll get all your bacteria. Won't get viruses. And one thing I want to emphasize when you're dealing with really bad water, see, this is a statistical thing. And it's really important that you understand, and you want to look at see this word I have on here, absolute. If it doesn't say absolute on the filter, it means it's nominal. So you're looking for some terms, you need to learn about them. If it says 0.2 microns absolute, that means that nothing larger than 0.1 0.2 microns and larger will be caught. Now, if it doesn't say absolute, it's nominal. And what nominal means, in case you want to have another example, what's a 2x4? We buy a 2x4. We say it's 2 by 4 inches. What's its actual measurement? See, the nominal dimension is 2 by 4. The absolute dimensions of a 2 by 4 is 1.5 by 3.5. So when you're talking about water filtration, if it doesn't say absolute, what it means is that it will take out 85% of everything that is 0.2 microns and larger. That's 15% through. Now, if the water is clear and clean and doesn't have any odor to it, you know, and that might be just fine because there aren't very many of those things in there. But if we're talking about some of that filthy water that has billions of microbes in it, viruses, microbes, and all kinds of things, you're going to let 15% of them through. Now, if you only had, 200 in there, well, 15% is probably okay. Your immune system can handle that. If you've got billions of them in the water and 15% get through, it's going to overpower your immune system. You're going to get sick. So lots of little details to learn. Okay. Now we want organics removal. Get the taste and some of the chemicals and things out. That would be an absorber. That's usually a carbon block being best. Reverse osmosis could be used, but you have to have pump and a power for that because they run with high pressure in there. But you can get systems that'll do that. Viral post-treatment. Now, there are some filters that they will take out viruses. But unless they say that it's an absolute, then when you're dealing with this, 15% get through, 15% of 3 million that were in there is going to be too many. It's going to get you sick. So you may want to consider having post-viral treatment using chemicals, UV, and heat. That'll take care of them. And then you may want to get chemicals out there because if I'm using iodine or chlorine dioxide or other things, you may not want to drink all those things. And so you can use chemical removal, another absorber. And then, of course, we have some other things to consider, ion exchangers if we're dealing with radioactive salts in the system. and distillation, which is really nice. You should do something there. But most of the cheap stills that you'll buy, I mean, just a couple, $300, they're huge energy hogs. I don't tell you that. They make clear, clean water perfectly good that you can use for tinctures and batteries and stuff like that. But you can't, it takes huge amount of fuel to make distilled water by one of those things. You need something more efficient than that. Everything can be expressed on a chart like this, which we go over in depth in the class, because you see, I want you to have these things in your head so that you'll take a look at that water and say, "Ooh, I got to do boiling, and therefore, if you look on this, I have to boil for hepatitis A. I have to boil for 2 minutes." That's where the 2 minute boil comes from. If you don't have Hep A or viruses in it, and by the time everything's at boiling temperatures, they're all dead. So you want to understand these things. So in the Liquid of Life, that class, we go over them in depth in there. Okay, in conclusion, wanting to get you motivated about really getting serious about doing this stuff, because it's really easy to get kind of lackadaisical about, "Oh, I got a few things stored, I'll be okay, and I'll learn when I need to." Following a disaster, you must know what you have, and have that is foolproof solutions. Because if you make a mistake, it becomes deadly. Now, what I've given you to is some parts of these classes. I pulled parts of them out of the hidden deadly disaster. That's the sanitation one and the Liquid of Life. Because, it's much easier to keep well and not get sick. But when you are sick and ill and feeling bad, trying to get well is really hard. So prevention is critical for this. Loss of your utilities won't be a problem. If you store ample amounts of water to start with, you need some of those big water drums and or 55-gallon drums. You got to have enough to get you started until you can come up with other sources and get everything out so you can, make it clean. If you can truly purify water, know that you can. You don't have a way to test it. The only way you can test it is, well, I think my system's working, this little filter, whatever it is. Well, give it to your neighbors for a little while, see if they get sick. If they get sick, don't use it. That's a rude way of doing it. You have to know that you can do this because you don't have a way of testing it. You have to have the ability to keep your environment sanitary and clean, everything around you. So is there any doubt that sanitation is a preparedness parachute? You have to get it right. And that these are two key areas: ample amounts of water stored to begin with, and then the ability to make water safe, that for both cleaning and for consumption, critically important that you can do that. So when you talk about these 9 areas that I go into, this is where I teach all my classes and publish, and there's in these 9 areas, everything you need to know, do, and have for every day of your life is in them. And you look at the curriculum and all the pages, kind of my catalog, well, there's 200 classes or so. Oh my goodness, some of them are long. It's like, do I have to know, do, and have all that stuff? Let's get real about this. Can you know, do, and have everything? No, you can't. The reality is that it's not possible for any one person or household to have, know, and do everything. That's why I talk about community every time, because when systems break down, when everything is turned upside down, we're in it together, and we need each other. We need to work together. You've got to develop community around you. You see, in order to survive, if others around you are not engaged, you want them engaged, but if they're not engaged, you see this, if you're doing everything right, but everybody in your neighborhood's doing everything wrong, you got a problem. Your survival is being diminished. So let's talk about community for just one moment. Won't spend a lot of time here, but a community, the way I define it, is a unified body of individuals bound together through agreed upon common attitudes, character, interests, needs, fellowship, participation, work ethic, and commitments to the positive benefit of all. You need to find people, and all our personalities don't match. There's some wonderful people, very intelligent. I would not want to be living close to them very long because they're just have a different personality. So you want to create your community ahead of time. Very important that you do that. If you're not doing that now, you need to start now. And there's more to community, but I won't go into that anymore because we're going along here. You see, a community is not optional. Creating and or being a part of a community is something that you must do, or you will not make it when things get really, really bad. That's the bottom line. Okay, start now, meet regularly. Not to bash our leaders, not to commiserate about everything that's wrong. Yeah, we talk about them, just be aware. But we want to be positive, future focused, based on living providently right now, making provisions. Never, never alone. So I say community is not an option. Don't know any like-minded people? Well, look around in the audience or some of the people around you, know some people there if they're close by. And or I'm alone in my neighborhood. I have people say that, what do I do? How do I find a community? My neighbors are scary. Huh. If you think they're scary now, wait till things break, man, they're really gonna get scary. So you may want to consider, when I was in New York, walking around Battery Park, looking at all those apartments and everything. And I was asking, because I asked myself, what if I was here? What if I lived here? What if it broke down? Now, if people really were prepared and were storing, and we could make it, but they aren't. My conclusion was I would move. I have to move. In fact, I moved out of Little Pleasant Grove up in Utah County. I moved out to a tiny little community. We don't have a stoplight. We don't have a Walmart. We don't have a McDonald's. That's what I was looking for. A little community, 1,000 people. Now, if you're looking to find some people around you, consider CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams, Citizen Corps, which is actually CERT comes under Citizen Corps. This is a nationally promoted programs here. You can just go on a Google search and say Citizen Corps near me and those things, CERT teams, and find there's people who at least are thinking community. Go there, look at them, make friends with them, talk to them. You may find people there you can work with. Now, truth about life, well, life happens. Be ready. Make it an adventure rather than something scary, terrible. True preparedness is based on understanding, knowing, learning principles, not just a list of things to buy and skills to practice. What you know is more important than what you have. So, preparedness is a lifestyle I call provident living. Test, try, have fun, play with it. Experiment. That's where you're getting your knowledge. And by the way, break a bunch of things right now. Find out things that don't work. Use them under real life conditions. Because some people, I don't want to use my emergency stuff. I might use it up or it might break. You better find out if it'll break now and then replace it with some quality stuff. Because a lot of that stuff is nothing more than trinkets, baubles, and beads you buy in these kits. Just make it part of your lifestyle and do it for all the positive reasons at the bottom line. So, will you live providently by making provisions in all the areas you need to make? And the choice is yours, is what it comes down to. Because if you do that, you can face the future with hope and with confidence rather than fear and trepidation. Now, let me give you a little bit more where to go and get some of these things. And again, I appreciate Marcel. All the classes he teaches, get there every time you can. Go in there and listen to those people. I know some of them, they're very knowledgeable. They will help you. Do they have all the answers? No, they don't. Do I have all the answers? No, I don't. But I have some of them. And so you need to look around and get things that fit you. Now, these two classes are published on jimsway.com. In the members library. I'll tell you how to get there. Jim's Way, that's my website. There's a bunch of free stuff, but you can look around. But newsletter, that'll bring you to where you can. I do a Saturday morning. I do a 9 o'clock Saturday morning open forum Q&A every week. Come and answer questions, ask questions. Then the other thing is there's a members library. It's supporting members. It's $5.99 a month. Sign up. Watch those two classes, get them, and then sign off if you want. Say, drop me out. I don't care. You'll spend $6. What used to cost for those classes published on DVDs, there's $60 there. Now you got $6. You can attend them and watch everything in detail. And you can also come back periodically. There's a bunch of other things in there too. Maybe you want to stay, but that's where you can get a lot of information. And I'm glad to reach out to other groups and teach and what have you. Go there, do these things, learn, listen to those folks there at home at Food Storage Depot, and Marcelo and his classes, good man who's working hard to teach people. Well, that's what I have for right now. Thank you very much. I'm here for Q&A as long as you want to ask. I'll be glad to do that. And or we can all go home with our heads spinning and going like, what do I need to do? There's some more things I can do. I can learn. I can have fun doing this. Make it fun for all the good reasons. All right. I've said enough. By the way, chlorine will do nothing to take care of cryptosporidium or giardia. It won't touch them. You can slush them in Clorox, straight Clorox. It won't kill them. So you have to use a different thing on them. Chlorine dioxide will get them. But let's go back to the cheap chlorine, because that's a pretty good thing for sanitizing and for water. Let's say I've dosed it with a small amount of it, and there's some charge for that, and I've used a little bit of it. And I can, when I first sniff the water, there's a chlorine smell to it. And then you let it set for a half hour, like at a room temperature. If I can't smell any chlorine at the end, in other words, all the chlorine has been used up in the process, you can buy chlorine test strips, but you're eventually going to use them up. I just use my nose. After it's set for a half hour to an hour, if I can still smell in a closed container, if I can still smell chlorine, then it means there was enough chlorine to go all the way to the end of the process. Now then open it up, let the chlorine escape, or take it out with a carbon filter. If you tried to use the chlorine to kill stuff in the water, and at the end of the 30 minutes or an hour in a closed container, if I can't smell chlorine, dose it again, because it means there wasn't enough chlorine to get all the way to the end. So there are some things that you can learn to do, but there is not an inexpensive that I have found. There's some really expensive equipment, but you have to have the lab experience and all. So no, you just have to overdo it is what it comes down. That's why I talk about 9 to 12 stages, because I can't take a chance on having bad water that get me sick. That's now when you're talking about, clear stream water we have right now, you can do that with a single or 2-stage system because there's not much in it. But when it's really filthy, we're talking billions of microbes in there. Another question.
Yeah, the question. Okay, go ahead. So talking about boiling water.
Yes.
So, go ahead and answer.
One way that will kill all microbes. It will do that. When you bring it to a boil, the most durable of the microbes is hepatitis A, and you want to boil it for 2 minutes. That'll take care of them and take care of everything. Now, but the thing about boiling water, it'll do nothing to help the taste. It'll do nothing to help the clarity. And you'll still have, I'll say, the dead bodies of the microbes in there, and some of them can be kind of nasty. But if you're talking about water that's fairly clean, that might be contaminated with a little bit of bacteria or some things, yeah, boil it. But then it's a good idea if you have a carbon-based filter that you can run it through that will absorb any of the flavor, any of the chemicals in there, and would take out maybe some of the color to the water. So boiling is a good way to do it. However, you have to have a source of heat. Electricity, if you have electricity, or natural gas if you have that, or propane or something. And when the grid is down, all those things are going to go away. Well, wood, coal stoves, things like that, you still boil water. So it is a good fallback, but you have to have the heat, the container, and you have to understand it will not take out chemicals, heavy metals or things like that won't be taken out of the water when you boil it. We usually don't have too much of a problem with that. When you look at, in the full class, I look at what the Red Cross and FEMA say about water purification. And if you get their publication, it's free, and you look at it and they say the only way they recommend that they don't recommend any filters. I'll tell you why in a minute, but no filtration. They want you to use chlorine, boiling, or distillation. That's kind of the lowest common denominator that'll make water safe for people that don't know anything. Now, you should be knowing some things. The reason they don't want you to use filters is the cheap filters leak very commonly. The cheap filters don't do that good of a job. Besides that, they may be nominal, where they're going to take out 85%, which if the water isn't all that bad, but 15% and get through, it gets you sick. So they're saying, since we know people are not going to be educated about filters, use them right, use multiple stages, we just simply say no filters. Boil, chlorine, or distill. but you have to have a source of chlorine, a lot of people do, and you have to have a source of heat to boil and a pot and everything, and distillation takes even more energy. They're doing it for the people that know nothing, that only, downloaded this book to have just in case, and they look and they say, oh, boil, chlorine, or distill. So don't be the lowest common denominator. Learn about the other processes that you can use ultraviolet, depending on the water. You can use the filters, the right kinds of filters. You may use stages of filters. All of those things can be done, but you have to be educated so you know what you're doing. In fact, we'll go back to right here, these principles are right here. There's the principles that you look at and understand. There may be different orders you can put them in, but you have to go through those processes, particularly when you're dealing with nasty water. Any other questions? Hope that answered. Yeah, keep.
Yep, we got one. What do you do for sewage when you have a basement?
Basement where you can go around and find all your floor drains. And you can plug those floor drains. You can buy test plugs that you can put in the floor drains. Now, if you have a shower in the basement or a tub, it'll come up in that tub, and there's not a good way to cut that off. It'll come up, back up into the toilet. So the test plugs are temporary, but as the water keeps backing up and up, it'll finally overflow tubs, showers, and toilets. Now, what you can do, excuse me, and what most cities now have in the code, they have in the code that you must put in a backwater valve. A backwater valve is a check valve that allows the sewage to flow out from your house, water to flow out. But if it wants to back up into the house, it closes. Some of them are better than others. And so you can put in a backwater valve, or you can put in a manual valve. Now, the manual valve that you can, a gate valve that would close that off, you'd have to be there and know there's a problem. See, if your neighbors up the street are going like, hey, I got all this sewage coming in my basement. You got any of yours? You're going like, no, go out there and close your valve. So you can install those things. They can be expensive because you got to dig a hole and you got to get a plumber unless you know what you're doing on that. But you can, in fact, fix that problem by temporary, the test plugs that help you. But you can also, this is what I teach in the class. If it's coming your way, the power is off, the power grid is down, something has happened, cyber attack, EMP, whatever the heck it is, terrorist attacks, and it's going to be gone for a long time. Sewage disposal is not going to be coming back. What I want to do is I want to plug, if I don't have a way of doing it with a valve, I want to plug my sewer line. Now, I'm going to plug it in such a way that I'm going to dig it up to put it back into service. But I'm serious. You turn your basement end full of sewage, you've probably lost most of your supplies because they're down there. Now you got a swimming pool in your basement that smells bad. It's going to get you sick. You have to get serious about this. So you find the clean out that's usually up close to the house, out of the main line in there. You open up that clean out, and then you're going to stuff thing down in that line. You want to have the rod that you know you can do it that's flexible. So I'm going to push down into it, towels, sheets, whatever it is down inside of that, push it down beyond the where the sweep is down there, and then I'm going to pour concrete on it. When I say plug it, I mean plug that sucker, because I do not want sewage in my basement.
So she says, does it usually happen during the flood?
Now, unless you were there, you saw the code, you saw them install it, you don't know if there's one or not. When I install them, I used to do this. I put them inside the house, in the basement, where I have a opening in there that's covered, that I can get to where that valve is. I know it's in there. And I also add to it a manual valve, so I can close that thing. That's probably not what you have in your house. You could do it. You could chop a hole in the floor if you know where it goes out. You could interrupt that main line that goes out. You could put a valve in there. But again, it's expensive to do those kinds of things, but it's fixable. But just understand, if you have a basement, you are at risk of people's sewage in your basement unless you take action to prevent it beforehand, or get real serious about once it's occurring to stop it from occurring, from, going further.
Well, Jim, we're out of time.